Bonjour, je m'appelle Anna Coutts et j'étudie à Paris. I'd always been in love with France, and Paris is very much the center of it all. It was the metropolis, and at the same time something that could bring you into the history of France. An average day in Paris, I would get up in my family's apartment, take a small breakfast. It's usually a little bit of a baguette and some jam, maybe some fruit if you're really hungry. You take a walk down to the CIEE Center, and that was about a 5-minute walk for me. For some others it was a longer commute, but I had a nice little walk. I'd go to class for a few hours depending on the day, and I'd get lunch with some of my friends from the center, and after school we would just explore the city. My favorite part of Paris was probably the bridges. There are so many bridges in Paris, and I really enjoyed going for walks along the Seine and just seeing all the tourists go by and all the flower shops that are along the Seine. The fashion was very different from Scranton. Paris I would equate with New York in that people are dressed a little bit more business casual. If you're ever going to wear a skirt, then you definitely have to wear stockings, and you just had to keep in mind that you're going to be walking around a lot, so make sure that you wore comfortable shoes. For the most part, I liked to wear leggings were comfortable to wear with a tunic or a dress. I also wore a lot of scarves. Scarves were really popular as a fashion statement and just practical for the spring semester when it was a little cold in February. For shoes, I like to wear comfortable boots. Still have to be somewhat fashionable when you're in Paris, but comfortable at the same time. Clothes shopping can get a little expensive in Paris depending on where you go. One of the more upscale places that you could go to was Galeries Lafayette, and that's where you could get haute couture and high-class clothes that I really couldn't afford, but it was still beautiful to see. If you wanted to go clothes shopping in France, there are assignment stores all around, and even if you were to take the train out to the outskirts of Paris, then there's more like malls, things that we're used to around here. One of the foods I probably ate most was called a jambon beurre, which is a ham sandwich on a baguette with butter. And it's really simple, but people have that often. They do have the stereotypical French food in the high-class restaurants, like if you're going to have steak frites or escargot, anything like that. And it is delicious, but the locals don't eat it as much as you would think. My favorite dish was probably when I went out to a restaurant with my mom when she came to visit me. We got a piece of lamb that was just cooked so well, and they just knew exactly what to pair it with, what wine, what vegetables, and it really is one of the best cities to eat in. Whenever I went out to eat, I would go out with some of my friends from the program, and we'd usually like to try a new cafe or restaurant every day. We really didn't have one that we went to every time because Paris is such a big city, you just want to try whatever you can whenever you stumble upon it. It was really nice using Yelp or word of mouth to get some good restaurants where you could get something very different. There are 3 main places that you can go grocery shopping in Paris. As to its expense, it depends on which one you go to. The most expensive one is Monoprix, which is comparable to Target. It has clothes, but mostly grocery items that are just going to be a little bit more expensive than if you were to go to the one that I went to the most often, which was Franprix. They have regular grocery items, but they don't do clothes or anything like that. And then the cheapest one that you could go to is Dia, and it's least expensive because it's not very organized, but you can still get a pretty good meal for really cheap there. I chose to do a homestay, and I was put with a family of 4. It was a traditional apartment in the 9th arrondissement of Paris, and I absolutely suggest doing that. Paris is one of those cities where you can kind of get lost in the culture and still not get 100% immersed, depending on what you do with your time. But when you have a family that you're staying with, you can pick up on their customs, or perhaps just local things that they like to do, they'll bring you along. So I really would suggest that for staying anywhere. I lived on the 3rd floor of an apartment building in the 9th arrondissement, and I had my own bedroom and my own bathroom with a shower and a toilet. I know other people that were in my program, their situation could change. Everybody definitely gets their own room, but whether or not you get your bathroom depends on what the house is like. Despite what people think, the local Parisians aren't nearly as rude as what I heard when I was about to go over to Paris. They were really quite nice as long as you attempted to speak French and weren't obnoxious. As for making friends, it wasn't too difficult, but it was very different from making friends in the US. They won't just go up and talk to you like around here. So if you're trying to befriend some locals, the best thing that you could do is go up and try to start a conversation and make sure that you stay connected with that person and put in the effort. The thing about Paris is you don't need to know French to get through it. It definitely helps, and it's very courteous if you at least attempt to say bonjour when you start a conversation or walk into any kind of a shop, and say merci at the end. I mean, you can get along with that and they'll appreciate the little bit of effort that you put in, but you don't have to know French to get around. I found that in Paris, one of the things that they often do that we don't is when you walk into a place of business, a store, whatever it might be, you always say bonjour to the person that is at the register. They will usually try to help you out, but it's not like America will go up and say, hello, what can I get for you? But you must always say bonjour when you come in and au revoir when you leave. It's just the polite thing to do, and they might think you rude if you were to walk in and out without saying anything or buying anything. I think the most Parisian thing that you can go out and do is to have a picnic on the weekend. Weekend picnics is something that they absolutely love when the weather is nice. You can get a bottle of wine, some fruit, some bread, cheese, all the picnic necessities, and just head out to any of the many, many parks that they have around Paris with your friends and enjoy the sun. One of the hidden gems I discovered in Paris was Parc de Butte-Chaumont, and that was in the northeast of Paris, and it was a beautiful park with so much land and water elements. It was just really well laid out, and it was something that not a lot of people get to because it's not in the center, it's really towards the edge, the périphérique of Paris. And I think if you were to go, that's one of the stops that I would make again. The thing that surprised me the most when I was in Paris was probably how the youth interacted. Like people my age, you go out to a bar, you go out to a club, and the way they interact is very different from how we do here. They're just a lot more polite and a little bit more distant when it comes to strangers, but at the same time extremely friendly. The study part of the study abroad experience wasn't too difficult for me. I took 6 classes, and It was relatively easy to juggle along with seeing the sights and just taking time for myself. But I really think that one of the classes that people in my program capitalized on was the architecture class. It was our favorite because it wasn't like grammar or conversation where you're sitting and talking about current events. It was learning about all these different architectural elements of some of the buildings located around Paris. And then for the second half of the class, we'd actually get to go out and see these buildings and see parts of Paris that we might not have seen on our own, and see different parts of buildings and the art behind it that we might not have appreciated without the knowledge we gained from the class. People in Paris like to get around by walking. It's really easy to get anywhere on foot, but I would definitely say the second biggest mode of transportation is the metro. You can get a Navigo pass for the month for about 67 euros is when I went. I'm sure it changes, but everybody uses the metro or walks. It's just really easy to find a metro station wherever you're in Paris. There's one every few blocks. My tip if you're going to use the metro is to preferably not use the metro map. They do give you big maps at the beginning of school, and they are great for emergencies, but it absolutely marks you as a tourist if you have a big map unfolded somewhere. They have them each station has a map right next to the entrance where you can see where you are and find your next station. People tend to use that more than the touristy maps that they hand out. I also suggest getting a Navigo pass, which will be useful for the entire month, and then you don't have to buy an individual ticket every single time you want to use it. It's extremely easy to travel anywhere from Paris. It truly is a capital city where you have access to different countries and different parts of France. Traveling was so easy throughout France. If you were to take the SNCF, which is the train that they use, you just get a youth card. For anyone between the ages of 18 and 26, it'll give you a huge reduction on any kind of ticket that you get to travel throughout France. And it was pretty cheap and really worthwhile to do that. But they also have, beyond the train stations, 2 airports. And if you were to take a bus to one of the airports, you could get anywhere for relatively cheap using Ryanair or whatever cheap website you use to get tickets. Drinking in Paris, it really depends on the expense. If you were to go out to a bar, I would say that it's pretty expensive. For me, it was about 5 euros for a beer or cider and 8 for a cocktail, which, depending on the translation of money, can get pretty expensive. But if you were to go to a liquor store or a wine store and just get a bottle of wine, it can be anywhere from 2 to 10 euros for a really good bottle of wine. So that's what I would suggest doing. I made a lot of American friends through the CIEE program. For the most part, everybody in the program was American. If you were in the advanced program, you would get to go to universities throughout Paris, whether it's the Sorbonne or Diderot. And then you can have more opportunities to meet people our age and make friends from France. I wasn't in the advanced program, so to make French friends, you really have to go out of your way to talk to people. One of the best things that you could do is go to one of the bars in the Latin Quarter, which is where all the universities are, and that's where the university students will hang out. And they really think that foreigners are interesting, so you strike up a conversation, they'll have tons of questions, it's really easy to become friends. One of my most unforgettable moments was the last day that everybody was in Paris, right before everybody was going to leave. It was our last chance to get together. We just had a small picnic on the Champs de Mars right next to the Eiffel Tower, and we waited for the sun to set so that the Eiffel Tower would light up and sparkle.
On reste à Paris, toujours. Oui,
I just
toujours.
remember basking in what Paris had to offer me and thinking to myself, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go home. This place really became a new home for me. As a tip, I would suggest that you keep in mind that tipping is already included in the price of everything in France. So if you are going to tip your waiter or waitress, it's usually considered insulting in that you're saying that you have more money than them and they need it more than you. So it's really something that you should avoid in case you might accidentally insult somebody. The word I would use to describe my experience is surreal. It really was something that was like a dream.